Everybody, welcome to another episode of the Coach's Corner University podcast. I am here with my friend CJ Appenzeller.
Perfect enunciation.
I thought it was great. CJ and I met at a business mastermind in Reston, Virginia. Hit it off pretty easily. He's a pretty tough person not to get along with. So
Thanks.
I'm actually really excited to get to know a little bit more about him, his backstory, because it seems like he's done a lot of things, helped a lot of people, and he's come away with a ton of insights. So CJ, welcome to the podcast, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited. Good stuff, man. I've never been this cool before, so, just bear with me.
You never been cool before?
No, not once.
No?
Not this cool, man. I'm on here with Paul. Like, we're doing the thing now.
I feel like people have this idea that I do like a lot of really cool stuff when legitimately my mom and maybe 4 other people watch the podcast.
Exactly 5 views.
Yeah, 5 views. No, but we're trying to make this a little bit more formal. I got my lighting set up and I got my camera, so
that looks good, man.
We're good to go. I'm wondering, let's just start it off, man. I mean, the typical way to start off a podcast is what brought you here today. What do you do? What's your story?
Yeah, man. So what brought me here today was a breaking and entering, a little B&E. Okay.
That
I'm not talking about.
Got me off guard. Okay, go ahead.
I'm not talking about bacon and eggs over here. All right. So when I came home from my freshman year of college, I had started lifting weights at college. I was like, I went to college at like 150 pounds, maybe.
Yoked.
Yeah, exactly. To play Division III college baseball. And I was like coming home like 170, 173. A couple of my buddies noticed. And they were like, hey, we want you to come train us. I was like, all right, cool, man. They're like, meet us at this batting cage and we're going to go through the thing. I was like, yeah, no problem. So I go roll up to the batting cage like noon and they're like, all right, follow us. We're going to go around the back. I'm like, oh, whoa, you don't have a key for this place? They're like, no, but we know a way in. We like punch this back door, garage door, like one thing through. They're like, cool, we'll just slide through here. I'm like, oh shit, here we go. Slide through, break into the batting cage. I'm training these guys. They had like one Gold's Gym bench, if you remember that bench.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that thing was sweet. 2 kettlebells. One was a 35 and one was a 26. And then like dumbbells, the most random assortment of dumbbells. They had 2 10s, 3 15s, and like a 30. I was like, perfect. We're going to get after it in here. And I start training these guys. All of a sudden, the lights come on in the office, which is like the front where we came in the back. And I'm like, shit. Maybe it's somebody who doesn't know I'm not supposed to be here. I'm just going to play it out like as if I'm supposed to be here.
Act as if. Yeah, totally.
Exactly. So the guy comes out. His name's Jim, which I found out later. And he's like, what are you doing here? I was like, oh, hold on just a second, sir. I'm coaching right now. I got to give these guys my full attention.
Stop.
like you're going to have to just hang tight for a second, then we can communicate. He goes, what are you doing here? And it turns out he's the owner of the business. And instead of calling the cops, Jim hooked it up and actually was like, hey, you have a job interview with me on Tuesday at 6. And I was like, okay, cool. I'll be here. So I get there Tuesday, 5:45, early, 15 minutes early, which I'm still a stickler for time. And he's like, what are you doing? You're late. And I was like, dude, you definitely said 6. I'm wearing a shirt and a tie like an absolute dork.
Yeah.
And he's like, come on out here. There's like 13, 12-year-old kids. He's like, train them. I'm like, all right, cool. Let's get it. Loosen up my tie. I'm like, let's ride. So I take him through a session. He's like, cool, you're hired. You're working with all of our baseball teams, which is kind of the baseball thing, right? I played in college, but also, that's kind of how I wound up in the niche was you're going to train these guys. So that was my first job, breaking and entering, and that's how I wound up here.
I thought when you said start with breaking and entering, I thought you were going to go with I learned how to lift weights in prison.
No, that would have been cool, though. That would have been way cooler. And if I was like most of the industry, I might have just made up a story about going to prison, but that's neither here nor there.
Yeah. I mean, shout out to Jim. Like that's a really cool way to honestly just forgive and move on. And I mean, without that benevolence, you probably wouldn't be, the owner of a gym, opening up a brand new one. Like there's a lot of cool stuff that you've been doing since then. So primarily you're working with, you came up working with baseball athletes. You work with a number of pros now.
Yes, I do.
And But you actually mentioned that the new gym you're opening is for mostly for Gen Pop.
Yeah, so the initial gym, we wound up gym. We wound up renting space from gym for our initial spot. We
Okay.
rented. It was a 550 square foot sublease, and in there we just trained baseball players. It was just me, actually. I'm saying we. I'm so used to it. After the first maybe 8 months or so, somebody was like, "Hey, can I train while my kid does hitting?" And I was like, "Sure." Started a mom's boot camp that was 13 years ago, and I know that because we some of those ladies still train with us to this day. Um, yeah, we dude,
Cool.
yeah, very cool. I actually wrote a book called "Nothing Wrong with Being Strong: Strength Training for Women," and the woman on the cover of that, her name is Tracy. She's the best. She still trains at our gym to this day, which is pretty cool. But after that, I was there for about 13 months. And we just outgrew the space. Like we were busting at the seams. So we went to a 2,100 square foot facility where we did both Gen Pop and athlete. And that's where we got into, multiple athletes. We had field hockey, we had boxing, football, mixed martial artists. Jiu-jitsu wasn't popular yet. That's now, really big, and we have a bunch of those guys. But after that, we were there for 3 years, 2,100. Then we went to 5,000 square foot, and then we were able to go to 7,200 square foot. 7,400 square foot is our current location. We do both. We do athletes and small group adult. And now
Mhm.
our new facility, different name, 2, 3 towns over, is going to be all general pop. So yeah, I work with now, me personally, just our professional athletes. So we have professional athletes in 6 or so different sports, and I'm predominantly just working with them. High school athletes here and there. I still love to coach. I haven't coached an adult group in probably 6 years. Don't tell anybody. Yep.
Well,
Uh,
I think that's a really important thing to know because one of my best friends owns a gym here in Ottawa, and very similar model. Started off coaching youth sports. His youth athletes became pros. Now he's coaching pros. And what he's done is he's actually created a staff of coaches that are just as invested in his business as he is. So he's been able to step back, focus on the things that he really enjoys doing, and then growing the business while the culture of the gym is maintained and upheld by those coaches that he's hired. Was that a challenging process for you to step away and delegate? Because I know, like, for me, even hiring additional coaches for our team, everything we do is remote. I could not imagine delegating that and having to like be in the room. Like, that'd be so hard for me.
yeah, it's a brutal process. But if you want to have true impact, it's the process you have to go through, right? It's necessary growth.
Mhm.
So it took me forever, truthfully. Like every time I would hand a little bit off, I would micromanage it, hand a little bit more, micromanage it, right? Till
Mhm.
finally you have that kind of breaking point where, hey, I'm doing 16-hour days. I'm paying someone else to do 8-hour days, and I'm just doing their day too. So from a lifestyle perspective, it's not going to work long term, right? Which is what I kind of realized, number one, and then number two, then probably the bigger, more important concept was the concept of having a greater impact and legacy for
Mhm.
our community at large. I'm not going to be able to service effectively more than, I don't know, 50, 60 people. You and I talked about this at the mastermind.
Yeah.
Like we have over 100 athletes in person. We have over 100 general pop people in person. Plus, I have another 30 online that I'm coaching. So it's like
Mhm.
for me to effectively service all of them would be absolutely impossible. Could I collect money from all those people? Sure I could. But could I service them, to my standard? Absolutely not. So once you get to that point where you're like, hey, let me create an impact, or at least if that's what you want, let me create an impact that's kind of bigger than me, which is what I want. I want to leave kind of a dent in our local area. Then it's you have to hire, you have to be able to effectively lead, effectively train those people up, build out onboarding that makes sense, that's in line, as you said, with your culture and values, and then let them go. Kind of kick them out of the nest. Here you are, buddy. So
Yeah. It's it's something that I don't think gets spoken about enough because truthfully, in this industry, I feel like there's very few people that want to collaborate with one another or actively seek to collaborate with one another. So everyone kind of operates in the shadows.
yeah,
But my goal ultimately with this podcast is to just showcase people who are doing things the right way. And usually I don't say the right way because I'm a it depends kind of guy, but in this case, it is the right way to seek impact. You alluded to I could collect money from these people,
Yeah,
but that's not how you build a business. You build a business on impact and on service so that you never lose clients and you can just continue to add them to the roster.
yeah.
You can't do that if you dilute the service.
Correct.
Was that ever a concern for you as you stepped away that, man, if I'm not in front of these people, they're not going to be as happy with what we're giving?
Of course. And you know what? That's a real thing. That's a reality, right? People love their trainer. People love their coach, of course, right? And that just means that you did a great job. But then it's how you effectively communicate, number one, with the person in front of you. And I'm not big on like the terminology client. We even call our adult general pop people athletes. We just call them adult athletes or high performance
Yeah.
adult. Yeah, because it's like client to me sounds so transactional. And I know there's an argument like, well, they are paying.
Oh, I like
Sure, yeah, that's fine. You can semantics maybe, but so our athletes, like the way you communicate with them, and then number two, like how do you onboard new coaches, right? If I can say beyond a reasonable doubt that our director of adult fitness is way better than me, significantly better than me at training adults, it's not
Mhm.
close. Like I kind of alluded to it earlier. Like I haven't trained an adult group in 6 years. You throw me in that trench right now, I'll be able to run an effective training session for sure, but it won't be at his level, right? So how do you
Mhm.
do that? How do you elevate someone above you? Well, the very first thing is checking your own ego. Hey, what do I love? Number one, and then number two, what am I probably not that good at if I'm real with myself and kind of look at myself in the mirror? I'm probably not that good at training Tracy, who I talked about earlier, right?
Mhm.
Anymore. At one point, I was probably significantly better than Chris, our director, but now he's surpassed me, tenfold. And that's what true leadership is, right? Leadership to me is like coaching. It's like I am the roots of the tree. I'm going to create a foundation for you and give you all of the nutrients possible for you to then grow up. Hey, that was a pretty good.
That was fantastic. Great imagery, like 10 out of 10. Um,
Yeah, I was pretty proud of that. I was right off the top.
but that's the same kind of like much better worded, but it's the same way that I approached my business and when I started adding coaches. I mean, Liv was my first coach that I added on, my wife. Bro, she's so much better than me at so many things.
Yeah,
And it wasn't necessarily admitting that to myself, but recognizing like having her on the team is a huge asset. And then every coach that we've brought on has an expertise above and beyond mine in some area. And like once you start doing that, and once you start realizing like, okay, well, if I can leverage all of these people and if I'm the foundation, man, the growth is it's almost like incomprehensible where you can go.
absolutely right. Just like anything else, right? Like that age old adage is if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go together. If you want to make a true impact, a true dent, and like for you, if you want to conquer multiple kind of different sub niches or niches, I gotta be careful around you because my
We're French Canadian, so it's niche.
because I dropped anecdotal on you, and all of a sudden now
Oh,
I can't be sure about how I speak English. Um,
okay. It's okay. It's okay.
dude, I'm so glad that when I hand papers in for my PhD, I'm not verbally saying the paper because I gotta have more words like that. That I
I love
literally,
that you just dropped that you mispronounce anecdotal,
yeah,
but you're gonna be more educated than me.
yeah, for sure, for sure, yeah, yeah, dude, it's funny. I've been saying so for everybody not aware. I didn't know the word anecdotal. I knew what it meant. I just was saying anecdotal for at least 10 years. And Paul's like, that's not a word.
That's not a word. Uh, the where I want to bring this back to is how do you create buy-in for your coaches to be as invested in your business as you are?
Yeah. So the number one thing is time, right? I don't think, at least, and this is just my opinion, right? I don't think you can force feed someone your culture or you can force feed someone care. I really don't believe that. I believe when people see the power of what you do over a course of time, then that creates buy-in. So that's why our internship program is so important, right? We get this opportunity for 10 to 15 weeks, whatever it is, to bring people in, let them see what we do, let them kind of experience it from the coaching side of things, and then let them hear the stories from our people, not from me. I could say all the great stories about all the things that I've helped people accomplish. I don't really say that like we're the reason for anything because I don't really believe that. And I believe people that take credit for athletes like successes have serious issues with their with their own self image. But that's neither here nor there. So when you give them that time and let them experience, let them hear it from the person, from the horse's mouth, so to speak. That's what creates buy-in. And then they want to go and say, hey, how do you do that? How do you create that level of success for the individual, that level of confidence for the individual beyond kind of the gym numbers? Oh, they got stronger, they got better, they have a better body composition now. How do you create that level of confidence in an individual? How do you create that level of trust, care? And then one of our core values actually is A team, right? And our thing behind A team is that our gym is just a family that masquerades as a gym, right? How do you create that? How do you create something that feels like, even though they're paying for everybody out there, yes, they're paying us a lot of money, by the way. Yeah, we're not doing shit for free. That's silly. But how do you create that environment, right? Because everybody always, like when I say like family stuff, that's like the first thing people are like, it's not a family if you pay for it. Dude, I pay to be in my family all the time, by the way.
People are so cynical.
That's what they say. I pay to be in my family all the time. Listen, I know for a fact I have a gender reveal on Saturday coming up for my sister in law. I bought like 300 cake pops. I bought a card. I'm gonna put money in the card. I think we bought diaper. Like we bought all kinds of stuff. I pay to be in my family all the time. That's bullshit. Those two are not related. I'd forget where we were going with that. But that's how, so I create that buy in with my coaches by giving them the experience and the time kind of in the trenches so that they can hear it from our people about the power of the service, about the power of the culture, about the power of what it is that we actually do. And then all of a sudden, you have people who are, raving fans who want to be a part of it at a higher level.
I feel like it almost takes care of itself because, I mean, if they're going through this internship process and they're being exposed to the culture, if it's not something that you see that same fire from them, it's really easy to just not hire that person.
Exactly. Yeah, 100%. Hey, you're not a fit, and that's okay. You might be a great fit somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty frequently we get to the end of the internship process and I go, hey, I think you could be really good here. And I'm talking to our interns about what it is that they're trying to accomplish too. Like we have an intern right now who wants to go on, do his master's degree and then work in collegiate sector. It's like, cool. Like you want
What an idiot.
exactly, but that's okay. You have to let people make mistakes.
Yep.
It's like, hey, this might be a really good spot for you to land, right? All those things, even if they're not a fit with us. So that's important for me too, is like helping the students. I am a professor, so that's important too. And that's like a whole other side conversation. But to get them placed correctly and appropriately, it may not be with us, and that's perfectly okay. But helping them kind of realize what it is that they want to do, what kind of culture they want to work in, super important.
Have all the coaches that you've hired been through your internship program?
100%. Every single one.
That is really cool. That is really cool. Um, are you comfortable speaking a little bit about like the business model of the gym?
Yeah, sure.
I'm always very curious because I mean, you know as well as anyone, monetizing a gym is very hard,
It's hard.
right? It's one of the only businesses that you can start where unless you're approaching it with some sort of massive amount of capital,
Yep.
you're going to be in debt right off the bat.
Yep.
Can you give us like how did you start maybe accumulating equipment? You mentioned graduating in terms of space. How were you able to monetize this business into something that clearly now has multiple revenue verticals?
Yeah. So number one, like the model that I use to grow it won't be applicable anymore because of the competitive landscape. So like this new gym I'm opening, we're going in completely different to how I went in originally. So I'll tell you a little bit about that and I'll kind of tell you what I think, my personal opinion, where we're kind of heading. But initially I just had that 550 square foot sublease and I just had what I told you, that Gold's Gym bench, that random 30-pound dumbbell. Like that's all I had. And I made it work. And that at that time, you hate to name drop, but Joe DeFranco was super popular, right?
Yep.
and Zach Evanesh, Zach's a great friend of mine still to this day, even though I make fun of him constantly because of his voice. I do a great Zach Evanesh impression. But
Can you do it, please?
yo, homeboy.
Oh my God.
Yeah, dude, I do an excellent one.
Excellent.
I've done it for him. He doesn't laugh.
Which means it's good.
It makes it way funnier. But I have to thank Zach for a lot of this because he was writing about this. He was YouTubing before it was YouTube about this. He's like, yo, homeboy. He's like, get out there and train him with the rope. He's like, just bring a kettlebell with you. It's like, and that's what I was doing. You know, we were body weight, we were all of those things, and I would just slowly every month. If we made $800, we put $800 back into equipment. We had a local welder start training with us. Actually, first person I helped lose 100 pounds, he built us a rack. It was like, wow, this is awesome. Like, and we just started slowly accumulating in that way. And really, I didn't take a profit for the first at least 5 years. I didn't take a profit. So I was working another job. I was in college, and then I would coach and / run the gym, if you could call it a gym at that point. Yeah, I worked at an electrical supply house from like 5 a.m. to noon. It's pretty awesome. But yeah, so I was doing it all. Now with the current like competitive landscape, I don't
Yeah.
think you're going to be able to open something up and just be like, come on in, like we're just going to do body weight and do it.
Yeah. If you build it, they will come doesn't really work anymore.
I don't think so. You would have to be an absolutely electric personality and a great coach, which there's people are out there, but I think you're setting yourself up to burn out pretty quick.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, running 10 sessions a day. And then, yeah, so it's not great. So the landscape now, I think you have to have some capital to get started. And I think, you know, like we're going to do a pre-launch model that's been proven pretty well. And like we're going to open up with a full facility that looks like a facility that can demand the rates that we want to demand from a personal training model. And I call it personal training, but we do small groups. Everything on our athlete side is 6-1. At our new location at Active, that's the name of the gym. At Active,
Mhm.
will be 6-1 as well. At our current spot, ATS, for our adults, we're 8-1. So small group. Uh,
So sorry, we never mentioned like where is the current gym
yep.
and where is the new one?
So the current one is in West Berlin, New Jersey, which is like people know Voorhees. That's like the next town
Yeah.
over. Yep. And West Berlin's like a very small, like it's essentially just business parks and a few houses. Like that's the whole town. So we're in like the back of this business park. You would never find us. We have a video that takes you to the door when you sign up for an assessment with us. Like crazy, dude. Like, I'll post a video. You got to post a video. Actually, it's hilarious because you're like this. Like,
If you send it to me, I'll post it with the podcast.
okay, yeah, because you weave through this like this back area. But yeah, so that, and then we're opening up in Haddonfield, New Jersey, which is like maybe 3 towns over.
Okay.
20-minute ride. Different market for sure.
Mhm.
But yeah, very small spot. Very small. We're going to be like 1,300 square foot in the new one.
So now why change, like why expand away, almost like away from the bread and butter of athletes?
Yeah. So interestingly enough, what we found is like number one, the scalability and repeatability from a business perspective, right?
Mhm.
It's a significantly harder to develop skill set to train athletes. It just is.
For sure.
To deliver the results that they really deserve, right? So you're taking people in, coaches, everybody wants to work with athletes. I actually was on a call earlier today, and the thing I said was like everybody who's in the fitness industry played high school sports, and then the two choices were either go to Applebee's on Wednesdays and talk about how good you were at high school sports, or be a personal trainer. Those are essentially the two kind of avenues, right? And
It checks out. Yep.
yeah. So it's like you're taking all the guys out of Applebee's and you're trying to train them up on the true bioenergetics, the true biomotor, the true biodynamic qualities required to create transfer to sport is not impossible. It's just significantly harder. To train someone for general fitness is significantly easier
Yep.
and takes less time. So for us, the scalability was there. And then the next piece is like from a lifestyle standpoint, if you want to make a giant impact on the community, like I keep talking about, well, you start top down like any other model. If I can change
Well, the
mom,
parents.
exactly. If I can change the way mom eats, the way mom approaches movement, the way mom approaches and looks at gaining muscle, gaining cardiac function, all of a sudden
Mm.
now we're going to make an impact on the whole family. When mom and dad both are eating healthy, the kids are not going to go to the snacks, the snack cupboard or whatever it is to get snacks. It's just not part of the household lifestyle anymore. So that's kind of why we went away from it.
That was a huge shift for me personally because, my background, I was in collegiate strength and conditioning for 5 years. I was in the NCAA for 4 years. I was up here in Canada for a year.
Sorry to hear that.
Listen, we all make mistakes. We all make mistakes.
There it is.
But listen, I loved my job. It just at some point you mentioned the lifestyle just didn't suit me anymore, and I had to make a change. And I went from motherfucking kids in a field and in a weight room to trying to convince a woman who's on disability that going outside was not going to kill her.
Yep.
And I had to realize that that same emotional payoff you get when that kid shaves zero point 0.2 off of his 40.
Yep.
That's pretty cool. But actually convincing Sally that she can go outside and go for a walk around the block without having a panic attack, that's way more impactful on her quality of life than shaving that 2 seconds off. And then further that to, when I started coaching online, it was mostly power lifters. So it was like, yeah, cool. I took a guy from an 805 squat to an 850 squat
Yeah.
versus, I have a gentleman who type 2 diabetic. We got him to lose 80 pounds. He's no longer on medication. Like, that win is more impactful on that person's quality of life. And it took me a while to actually make that mental shift towards what I would consider wins.
Yeah. It's not as sexy, right? Like it's the Instagram, the TikTok era. We want the sexy thing. It's not sexy to do a zone 2 like training session. It's just not. It's not. I mean, there's no good way to communicate that. Even when I program it for people, you're like, hey, sorry. Like, do you have Netflix downloaded on your phone? Like all the things, right? Because now we understand, like, if we can get you to follow through with this, dude, I might add X amount of years onto your life. This is powerful stuff. But it's just not sexy. And I don't mean to diminish about what I said before. I don't mean to diminish the skill set required for training adults or general pop. The skill set is just significantly different. It's much more about habit change. It's much more about the psychology around how do I get these things as a part of my everyday habits and routine, my rituals, my rhythm. How do I build that flow? Whereas with athletes, I don't need to convince you to train, or if I do, then we should.
That's a fucking problem. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Athletes like to train. They want to show up. They want to pound weights, right? It's like, how do I make physical activity a part of the lifestyle of an individual? That's a significantly different skill set. And we've just found from a training perspective, it's easier to teach someone up, to coach someone up, a coach on how to do that than it is to teach them the biodynamics of every single sport we work with and time motion analysis. So
It is a really interesting dynamic because it's almost as if you go from coaching a person to coaching a computer to some degree,
yeah,
right? That athlete, you don't have to coach compliance with an athlete. You might have to coach a little bit of compliance on the lifestyle nutrition side because a lot of them are animals.
yep,
But that whole the line that I always use is the physiology only matters as much as the psychology allows.
mm,
And that's what you coach when you coach an adult athlete.
yep,
That's ultimately what you're trying to do. That habit change is so, 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 so important. Um, and it's most of what I do. Like in my check-ins, I barely talk. Like I collect a lot of biofeedback, but I barely talk about it with those clients. I talk about, hey, you're going away for the weekend this weekend with your girlfriends for your birthday. What is a win for you this weekend? How can we set guidelines in place so that you can win the weekend? And it's those types of conversations. It's not, hey, you're going away for your birthday. You better not fucking drink and you better get your training sessions in. Here's a link to the gym I want you to train at. Here's your program. Go do it.
yeah. Stop your bitching.
Fucking bitching, motherfucker.
Yeah, figure it out, Susan. I don't care. I don't care if you want to have fun. Yeah, it's interesting too. It's like we've created all these different things in our business, like all these little slogans, mottos, sayings, like strategies, essentially
Yeah.
that would like it's funny.
5 systems.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I do have 5 systems in your business. Actually, I'm glad you brought that up. But it's like we've created all these things for our people to use, and you're in a team meeting. It's like, hey, should we go over the 4 quarters and overtime weekend eating strategies with the athletes? I'm like, I hope not. I certainly hope we don't need to do that, right? Like, that's one of the things we tell our adults because it's like, hey, football Sundays, awesome, cool. Split the whole weekend up. You got 4 quarters and overtime. You got to make sure you win at least 3 of them. Like, what's it going to be? Friday
I
night,
love that.
yeah, Friday night, Saturday morning, Saturday night, Sunday morning, Sunday night. Got to win 3 quarters, win, right? Quarters.
Were you always that like system oriented when it came to coaching?
No, but when you hire people, you have to be. You have to create the scalability of the model is based in the system.
It's funny because I'm seeing myself having to go through that same transition where like I just coach people the way I coach people,
Yep.
and I haven't had the need to systematize it. But now that we're diversifying and hiring additional coaches, we have to, okay, like our philosophy for the business is, our RTB, raise the bar. What does raise the bar mean to us? It means, this and this, and we're going to have onboarding where every client is exposed to this RTB system and all of our coaches know what it is. And it's just really interesting that I think every business goes through that transition and it all comes down to scale. So the more systematized and process oriented you can be, the more people you can bring in, and then could bring it back to, if they're all bought in, there's no diluting that culture.
Correct. Correct. I mean, that's how you let your business actually work for you, right? At some
Mm.
point, you can no longer work in the business, or if you are still, then you are effectively, harboring the ability for that business to grow, right? You're
You become the bottleneck. Yeah.
Yeah, you are in fact the bottleneck. I like we talked about earlier. I can only service so many people myself. How do I bring people up to speed on that? And that's systems. That's what you do, And systems don't have to be like as I was coming up and going through that transition that you're kind of going through now too. It's like systems sounded so scary to me. I was like, oh my god, like I have to write down all of my thoughts. Like that sounds overwhelming. Our onboarding is literally what I'm doing right now with this exact same whiteboard background in my home office, me just telling them exactly what we do. Hey, this is what you do. Hey, a kid comes in injured. Perfect. This is exactly what you do. Right? Like, we have this system. We're going to use this, and this. And I just literally record it like this. They go through it. They onboard. We quiz them on it. And then we make sure they put it into action on the actual floor. We review every week in terms of their scorecard. We review every quarter in terms of their personal development, and that's it. Right? And that's how you create less scary systems that actually scale for you.
I love it. Let's bring it back to CJ as the person. You mentioned you're a professor. Um, Obviously you went to college, D3, unfortunately,
Yep.
because
Yep.
you're probably pretty dumb.
Could have
But
been
you're not dumb anymore.
D4, man. Could have been D4.
Go NAIA.
Nah, man.
No, baby.
Those guys are too good for me there. I'd have got right off the field.
So how did you approach your education throughout this? Because obviously you started coaching and running a business in college.
Yeah. Yeah.
What led you down the education route rather than just fully diving into business?
Yeah. This is another good one, too, because like I talked about Jim earlier and how like Jim made, a big impact on me and allowed me to do the thing that I'm now doing. The next piece to that was when I went back to college, right? And I say went back because I transferred a bunch after I was done kind of playing baseball. When I went back to college, I had a great professor, and he grabbed me and said, "Hey, would you like to speak?" I said, "Yeah, sure, I'll speak." So I was doing some guest lecturing for him, and then he said, after one of the guest lectures, he's like, "You know what? You would be a great professor." His name is Greg, and Greg is now my boss, actually, funny enough. But he goes, "Yeah, you would be a great professor." I go, "How do I do that? Tell me more about this. Like, what has to happen for that to happen?" And he goes, "Hey, all you have to do is go get your master's degree, and we can hire you as an adjunct." And I was like, "Perfect." Enrolled the next day in a master's degree, knocked the master's degree out in, I don't know, 6 months. Um,
Pardon?
yeah, I crushed that thing. At one point, I was taking 16 master's credits at once, which is pretty sweet.
And running a business?
And running a business. Yep.
How much cocaine did you do?
None that I can discuss live on air. Um, Lots of
Okay.
caffeine.
Wow. That's wild. Took me 4 years to do two. So I mean, well, 3.5 to do two. So I did it.
That's kind of the tempo I'm on with this PhD, man. It's like you just grind it out, do it when you can, and I'm like slowly but surely continually chipping away at the PhD thing. So
Where did you do your master's?
Liberty University.
Oh, were you there at the same time as what's his name? Oh my God. Strength coach, football strength coach, power lifter.
Yes, Bill
What's
Gillespie.
his name?
Bill Gillespie. Is that who you're talking about?
Bill Gillespie.
Yep.
Do you have any funny Bill Gillespie stories? Because I have, dude.
No, because I never
Really?
met him. I did my master's completely remote.
So I met Bill Gillespie at the CSCCA conference in 2010,
You were in
and
deep, dude. CSCCA, dude.
oh, I was in it. I was in it. It was in Orlando, and I remember meeting him. He was bench pressing on a Sorinex rack, and he had a measuring tape out measuring the height of the bench press, the height of the bar from the bench. He would measure his grip width and record it all in his book. And he had a PR for every height of bench, every width grip based on his finger, every diameter of barbell. He even had stitching built into his bench shirt to line up with his bicep vein based on how hard he cranked the shirt. It was the most autistic thing I've ever seen in my entire life.
I love it.
But the dude benched over 900 drug free.
Yeah, I was gonna say, and that's how you get to that level, right? The devil is in the details. But man, that's insanity. I've seen some
So what's
crazy things, but no, I never met Bill.
what is the focus of your PhD?
Exercise physiology,
Are you doing, is it course based PhD or is it like research based?
course based. Yeah,
Very cool.
yeah, I'm excited, man. It'll open more doors for me on the kind of education higher ed end, but more specifically, I'm just excited to make people call me doctor. Um,
You're going to be that guy.
oh my God, yeah, yeah. When I go to
Dr. Apashabadua.
Walmart, hey sir, I'll hold the door for you. It's doctor.
Doc. You're going to refer to yourself as Doc all the time.
Yep,
I
I'm
fucking love
the
it.
third person. Yeah, I can't wait, dude.
So, what have been some of the most transformative things within your career in terms of maybe something that made you question where you were at? Because this is something that I get all the time from the coaches that I'm working with in a mentorship capacity. It's almost like they run into these roadblocks and it just completely deflates them. And they don't realize how long the time scale from starting to succeeding actually is.
Yeah, yeah. So what's interesting about that is like I went through this kind of lull where the gym was successful and I was just starting to teach. And it was kind of like the question I kept coming back to in my own mind and in my own reflection was what is enough? A, and B, like, what is a win? You know, and you had mentioned that concept earlier today, but it's like, when am I going to be winning? You know,
Mhm.
like to everyone else's standard, you would talk to one person and be like, oh, you're absolutely crushing it. You know, you have a successful gym with 200 members, you're doing this, you're doing that, you're training professional athletes, you're teaching, you're doing all the things. And then you talk to somebody else, maybe a friend or something, and he's like, you only have 200 athletes? Dude, I have 5 locations with 800, 900, 1,000 served. It's like kind of getting clear on what winning looks like was a real challenge for me. And I really like just kind of broke through that in the last year or so, where it was like, hey, I need X amount of impact. I need X amount of opportunity. I need X amount of freedom from a lifestyle perspective. You mentioned earlier, it's like that's why collegiate S&C, that's why we keep making fun of it. There's just no freedom. There's
None.
you don't have off time. You don't have enough money to travel, and you don't have time to travel. It's like it's that catch 22. So getting super clear around those things, and it wasn't like one thing. I wish I could point to like one thing. Like Coach Cav has had a lot of impact in that area, and being able to kind of be a sounding board for me and just be like, hey, what is enough? What is enough? But there hasn't been one thing that got me through it. More so that self reflection that I'm kind of alluding to, and just writing down a ton, doing a ton of journaling about like, what does it look like if I'm doing the thing, and what is the thing? It was
Yeah.
a big riddle, man, for it was at least a year. It was probably 18 months where I just didn't kind of know what winning looked like. And I just really got clear on it. And the way I did it, again, just journaling, self reflection, and talking to a bunch of people. The problem is if you just talk to like one person, like I have a buddy who in Grand Rapids, good friend of mine, who owns 5 gyms, right? And he,
Mhm.
like, if I told you his numbers, like his monthly revenue, you'd be like, oh my god, like I'm not even doing any, I'm not actually working. Like I might be unemployed based on these numbers.
Right.
But if you just talk to him, it's like, all right, I have to have 6 gyms. That's winning. And then, you go into the higher education side and you talk to somebody and they're like, yeah, I'm an adjunct. I have 6 credits here, 6 credits there, 6 credits there. It's like, oh man, I might need to have, 3 more adjunct positions or a full-time position somewhere too. Right. So it's like being able to have people that you can just kind of bounce stuff off of, not so much that are going to give you pointed advice, but are just more going to listen to you and let you get the words out verbally.
Hmm.
Super powerful, super important. And that's really helped me a bunch.
If you had to define success for you in like one or two sentences, what would it be?
The ability to spend time with my wife whenever I want, while also still having the opportunity to coach highly motivated individuals.
I love that. Yeah, that was for me. It's been I've also gone through like this kind of reflection, and this is one thing that I do harp on a lot with the people that I work with is like you have to be very, very introspective when you operate a business. Because I heard this quote. It was, as he gets a bad rap, but I actually really like it. It's Chris Williamson who was talking about, you know, entrepreneurship is a professional development exercise masked as a business opportunity.
I like that.
And I thought that was perfect because your business kind of exposes all of your nooks and crannies. And, those feelings of inadequacy, those questioning yourself, all that stuff comes up. And for me to reflect on the fact that if my business grows to a point where I need to hire an assistant or I need to get to a point where I'm doing things that don't bring me joy, then I don't want to grow my business past that point.
Yeah.
And if that means that my income is capped at a certain point, that's okay.
Yep.
Because hell, man, when I was growing up, I was like, man, if I make 100 grand a year, I'm going to be fucking pumped. I made it.
Dude, in 2012, that was the thing. There was
That was,
literally materials on sale on the internet. Make your gym a 6-figure gym. I remember that. I remember being like, oh my god, if we could do 100 grand, dude, 100 grand doesn't even cover my payroll.
think about that one statement. That 100 grand doesn't cover my payroll, and that's the position you're in. It's tough when you take that in context to 16-year-old CJ, and you're like, hey man, like you're gonna own a business that has 100K payroll. He'd be like, nah, bro, I just want to play ball.
Yeah, I'd be in the league by then. No, I don't think I was ever that crazy. Like I kind of knew. I was like, man, if I could play some college, that would be cool. Like when I was in high school.
Yeah.
Yeah, I started on varsity 3 years in high school. I was like, I think I got it. I think I could play in college. And then I got like my first offer to a D3 school. I was like, that's where I'm heading. Let's go. But I'm glad I did because otherwise I probably wouldn't have went. Like if you fast forward to when I was 18, because I could have just done the gym without it, right? And then I wouldn't have this opportunity now in my teaching role. And I tell every single one of my classes that starts, I go, I am literally here to impact our industry positively because our industry sucks. And they're all like looking at me like this. And I'm like, no, seriously, 95% of physical therapists have no idea what they're doing. And I say that because that's most of my students are pre-PT, right?
Okay.
And then don't get me started. I always say, don't get me started on trainers and strength coaches because I literally forgot more about training than 95% of the industry knows. And this is a big hole. That's why I started teaching at all, right? Like I can make this positive impact if I catch you right here in this window between 18 and 21 and try to set you up on the right path. And that's, I wouldn't have that opportunity had I not been able to play, Division 3 college sports. So shout out D3. There's like a D3 barstool type thing on Instagram. That spot's pretty cool. I wish I knew what it was so I could give them a shout out.
Well, I'm like just kind of nodding my head and at this because a lot of people will complain about the industry. They will make, blanket statements about how shitty coaches are these days, or how people are doing things the wrong way, yet they never actually take action to positively impact the industry. And to hear you say, like, the only reason I teach is so that I can make a change, and I choose this population because this is the population I can impact the most. I think that speaks to your character, but I think it also speaks to something that most people, especially people who've been in this a long time and seen the progression of the industry to where it is, need to take ownership over their role in it. Right? Like, yeah, I'm 36 years old, not old by any means, but I've been a strength coach for 18 years.
Yeah, you've been in it for a long time.
Right? So there are a lot of lessons that I can teach these younger kids, and unfortunately, a lot of them don't want to listen, but the ones that do, those are the ones that are going to be leading the charge when I'm stepping away.
Yeah, you're not going to impact, just like every athlete that comes through your door. You're not going to impact every single athlete. You're not going to change every single athlete's life. But if you catch 1 out of 10 or 1 out of 20 or 1 out of 100, isn't it worth it? And I constantly ask myself that, and it constantly comes back to yes, it's definitely worth it. If I teach 60 kids a semester and one of them goes on to be great because of something I said, whether it was like my actual imparting of knowledge or it was just a concept or a construct that I introduced to them about greatness,
Mhm.
about being better. One of the things I say to my students, and all my students will tell you, I say, whenever I phrase a question, I go, because you're going to lead the industry, or I go, because you're going to be a great clinician, not a good clinician. And then I phrase my question. And then when they hand stuff in and they say 3 sets of 10 bicep curls, I say, this would be okay if you weren't going to be a great clinician,
I love that.
because
Okay.
this is right, but it's not good enough.
Okay. So here, let me ask you this. One thing that I see happening all the time is these people that will constantly seek the next course or the next credit or the next continuing education thing. And they think that more knowledge will actually move their business forward. Do you feel, well, okay, here's a bit of a double edged question. Do you feel that your education has been a catalyst to your business growth? Or has it been something outside of education that's actually moved the needle for you?
So, from a business perspective, learning more about business is what drives your business forward, straight up. Because that's obvious. It's all around us because we have bad quote unquote coaches, as like people who would listen to this would think, right?
Mhm.
People would be like, "Oh, that guy sucks. He's only popular because." If you catch yourself saying he's only popular because, that means you don't know enough about business, right? Because you don't understand how someone who is lesser in skill set than you, according to you, of course, right?
Mhm.
That
Yeah.
exists, that exists on a gradient scale, but someone who is lesser in their ability to actually do the task is making more money or is more quote unquote successful at business than you, right? So in terms of driving business forward, learn more about business. With that being said, I think there's an integrity piece and an interplay here that if you can't deliver on, and one of my students asked me this, so I'll rephrase this a bit, but if you can't deliver on what it is that needs to be delivered on in order to help someone reach their goal, or if it's outside of your scope, there's an integrity piece where you have to be okay to punt. Like, hey, we
Yep.
can't do this, right? So one of my students asked me, because I trained Tevin Farmer, 130-pound IBF world champion in boxing, and he said, "You came up as a baseball guy. How did you? Were you nervous when Tevin asked you to train him?" I said, "Well, no, absolutely not." He said, "How? How could you not be nervous? Of the level that he's on, etc." And I said, "Well, at the end of the day, I know I'm confident in my ability to deliver exactly what he needs. I've done the deep dive and the research and all of the work required to make sure that his bioenergetic, his biomotor kind of demands are met and surpassed." So I had no issue whatsoever at all. I said to my student, though, I said, "But if you don't feel that way, then you need to be okay to punt. You need to be okay to say, hey, this is outside of my scope, and I know somebody who can." And that doesn't make you look less than. It doesn't make you look stupid. It actually makes you look kind of like a cool superhero who knows when to call in, like the Flash. If you need to go somewhere fast, he's your guy. But if you need to swing from buildings, Spider-Man's more your jam.
I'm going to give you a mulligan on that analogy. It was very poorly executed.
We can't slide back and forth between DC and Marvel.
It's a continuity issue. I-
Very clear skill sets. I mean, like DC doesn't have a ton of guys that have super clear skill sets. If you want to be
it's
really
very,
rich, it's Batman. If you want to be really strong, it's Superman. Like, I don't know. I don't know where we go there.
I really like what you're saying because within that paradigm, imposter syndrome doesn't exist because you're never taking on a task that you're feeling unprepared to handle. You know, I made a funny video a long time ago that was like imposter syndrome doesn't exist. You're just an idiot, basically. You're just an idiot and you're unprepared. Because if you know what you're doing and you're confident in your abilities, well, you're not going to feel like an imposter. If you feel like an imposter, you probably are one. And I think that also speaks to like the level of preparedness that you have. I think in most cases, you mentioned earlier the skill set to train an adult athlete towards general fitness is going to be much easier to learn than the skill set to train high performance athletes.
Of course.
Most coaches listening to this are not coaching high performance athletes. The bulk of their clients are going to be those adult athletes.
Yeah.
And I don't want to dissuade someone from getting more education and learning more and deepening their skill set. But I can all but guarantee you that if you are coaching adult athletes, the linchpin to them making success is not you learning about high level hormone and gut health protocols.
Yeah.
It's going to be learning how to speak to them.
100%. 100%. And on the gut health hormone side, just punt. If you're not comfortable, punt. You can refer out. You have these resources, Marek Health, if you want to do something like that. And guess what? Charge more now. Because not now you're just not a solo practitioner. You're just not a coach. You also have this great Avengers, back to it, this great team of Avengers that you can call on to help with the other things. You're not good with rehab, get someone who is, right? Like just because someone else does all the things doesn't mean you have to be the one-stop shop too, right? There's power in having a team around you or having the ability to refer or kick out. So
I really like that. I mean, it's like, okay, well, I don't have this skill set. Can I bring someone on who has it and then grow my business based on referrals?
yeah,
I love it.
yeah.
So we're coming up on an hour, and I do like to finish with some really stupid questions. Because
What were
honestly,
the rest of these questions?
come on, man.
I'm just kidding, man. Let's go.
All right, fine. You want to go? You want to play like that? What were the last three searches in your Google history?
Oh my god, let's do
I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
it. I would have done it, dude. I would have ripped it.
You mentioned you were married. I didn't want your marriage to end because of a podcast.
No, dude, she knows. She knows.
They're probably her search questions.
Yeah. It's honestly
Um,
probably real estate stuff because of the new location. Dude, it took us forever to land that one spot.
okay, here's actually a better question before we move on.
Yeah.
With this transition to a new location, do you is it like a whole new corporation or is it under the same corp, just different location?
It's a whole new thing. So Active is the name of the new gym. Our old gyms are ATS. Or our old gym is ATS.
Interesting.
Yep. It's a rebrand because ATS is associated with elite athlete performance training in our area, like locally. So like
Mhm.
now we do general pop, but it's going to be a little smaller group. We want just a brand new kind of feel to it, where hey, this is not where athletes go, and then some adults train. This is the spot, the premier spot for Susan and Jenny.
I love it's always Susan, Jenny, or Karen.
Well, Susan and Jenny. So when we build out our back end like onboarding system for our salespeople,
Yeah,
those are our two avatars. So
that's really funny.
yes, Susan
Um,
and Jenny.
if you were on death row,
Okay.
which I mean, knowing you, it's not too much of a stretch,
Highly plausible.
highly plausible. What's your last meal?
Yeah, this is going to disappoint everybody, but we have this thing. And you know what? It's the city's gotten significantly worse. So where we are in Jersey, we're 25 outside of Philly, right?
Okay.
And the place used to be called Tony Luke's, but it is no longer. And I haven't been since they changed hands, names, all the things. But they used to have a chicken cheesesteak hoagie with mayonnaise and cheese. That was, dude, that would be it. Tony Luke's chicken cheesesteak hoagie, mayonnaise and cheese. But if you are from the local Philly area, I don't know what's going on over there now. So, but that would be it.
It's going to hell in a handbasket, I hear.
It's not great. It's not great. I can't believe they sold. This was like a cornerstone of the South Philly community for years and years. And I don't know the exact situation. So, again, people listening to this yelling at me or something. I don't know. I don't know what's going on over there.
Who is your Mount Rushmore of strength and conditioning? Four people. I was going to say four dudes, but four people.
Yeah.
Four individuals. Who do you look to?
This is the worst question ever for me because I don't think there's that many good coaches. Hank, who's become a mentor of mine, definitely is one of the forefront most on that.
What's his last name?
Yeah, right. Hank, you know what's up. Oh, you really don't know? Okay.
I know. Maybe I know, but the it's not. We're not just talking to each other here, bro.
Oh man, I'm saying, I can't pronounce it. I couldn't pronounce anecdote. Now you want me to pronounce Hank's last name? This is unbelievable.
Yeah.
Krajoff-ish.
Okay.
Yeah.
Krajoff-ish.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's like Hank Krajoff.
Okay.
Dude, I've been to Amsterdam 3 times to visit Hank, and I still can't pronounce his last name. I hope he doesn't get mad at me.
Yeah, sure. Just to visit Hank. Okay. Whatever.
That's what I do there. No red light. Just hang out with Hank.
Okay.
Yeah, so he's definitely up there for sure. I love Cal Dietz's work. Cal Dietz is somebody that you can't go full Dietz. And I've never met Cal, but I would love to. And I've asked a person that you and I both trust many times to introduce me, and I've been gaslighted many times. But I'll get my I will get my introduction at some point.
I met him at the CSCCA conference. The dude, and at the NSCA conference, the dude looks like he crawled out of a trailer park on a 4-day bender all the time.
Yeah, but I would love to meet Cal. I think Cal's work is great, and triphasic training is one of our internship texts. Like that's the text internship. Yep. So I think he's great. James the Thinker Smith is up there. James is really good. The problem with James is, for like undergrads out there, if anybody's undergrad listening to this, is that it'll go right over your head. He speaks directly like right here, right? So it takes a little bit of time.
My favorite was the supine pronated barbell implement press.
No way.
Oh yeah. Dude, when I was in grad school at Robert Morris, I printed out and had bound every single article he ever wrote for his website.
I love that.
I still have it in the basement.
That's awesome, dude. And speaking of website writing, because this is probably this last person. Oh no, he does have the book. Buddy Morris, I think, is excellent. I think his work from American football perspective is great. I think his work too for like collegiate S&C is worth the digesting because he's working with we shouldn't say similar, but similar numbers. Not probably population, right? These are elite, but if you're a D3 football strength coach, you probably aren't working with those guys.
You imagine being at the University of Pittsburgh and your strength coaches are Buddy Morris and James Smith?
You would never know, and you would go home to your trainer and tell them that they suck.
Yeah.
Like that's what you would do. Because there's guys now who are good, who I know and have relationships with, and our guys will come home and I won't tell them that I know them. They'll be like, yeah, guy, he doesn't know shit. CJ, you're way better. I'm like, we do the same shit. But yeah, okay. Whatever you say, man.
That's happened so many times where like people are like, yeah, man, this guy's saying some really cool stuff. Like, you ever thought about it? I'm like, I've literally given you the exact same protocol before.
That's so funny, man. But yeah, I think that's a pretty good one.
That's a pretty good Mount Rushmore, brother.
Hank, Cal, James the Thinker Smith, Buddy Morris. I like it. And I'm only friends with one of those people, which is sad. But yeah, I'll have to
go to Europe and meet James Smith.
I will. I have no problem going to Europe, dude. Like I said, we go every single year for Hank's. Hank has a symposium. It's like an invite-only thing. And I go every year for that. It's during rain season, too, which isn't sweet because it just rains every single day in Amsterdam.
I feel like there's a lot of sarcasm in there.
No, it's seriously, it rains every day. The sarcasm is the sweetness. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
It's not great to be getting poured on every day, but my wife loves it there, too, so we go. Very cool. Very cool.
Last question. If there was one person that you could see me interview on this podcast, who would it be? But the caveat is
Okay.
that you have to help me get them on.
Oh yeah, that's a great. Wow. Take notes, everybody, on lead generation and referrals. Uh,
It's not my first time.
now,
I think you are episode 52.
have you had Guadango on yet?
Oh my God. I have not had Grenango on.
Mike is. I can help you. I think
Okay.
he answered me this morning. I talked to him this morning, so I think I can probably introduce you guys. Mike's an interesting cat, man. Interesting cat. Very good coach. Actually, funny enough, on my he interned under Buddy and James the Thinker Smith at Pitt. Crazy.
Yeah, I met Mike actually. So when I did my undergrad, right as I was graduating, it was when I'd made the decision. I'm like, I'm going to be a college strength coach, and I went down and interned with DeFranco for a week
Oh hell yeah,
in Jersey, and that's when I met Mike.
Joey D baby. Joe is he's aces, man. He's great.
He's done so much in this industry that like people don't even realize how many things that he did and no one else didn't really take credit for, but he started.
Yeah, he opened the door. Like there was no garage gym, there was no athlete performance. I mean, Bill Parisi and him kind of like that was it, you know. And he started working for Bill, which is crazy, but you know,
Is Parisi Speed School still around?
they still do their thing, dude. They have a bunch.
Wow, very cool.
Yeah,
Dude,
I don't know how, but
CJ, thank you so much for joining me today.
I don't know, man.
I will have links to where anyone can find you in the show notes because you're going to send them to me,
Okay,
um, along with a bio and a picture.
all right.
But if there was one piece of advice or one thing to, leave the audience with, what would it be?
Get really clear on what makes you happy, because the industry standard for happiness right now is not probably the same as what would make you happy.
I like that. I like that. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Please make sure to like, share, subscribe, and ring the bell for notifications. And we'll catch you on the next one.
Thanks, guys.